told you?
There's someday I have to stand up for myself.
Someday is today, Finn.
Hello friends, my name is Stevie Cade and welcome to Film Trigger. The Black Phone landed in theaters this past weekend and I had the privilege to go see this movie with my son on his 18th birthday, and he's not a big fan of horror movies, but well, he's a trooper. If you didn't see our first reaction when we came out of the theater, I will tell you right now that I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. But I've had a few days to sit and think about what I really like and don't like about this movie, or on the fence about also. And I've actually found a few things I do have some issues with. So does that change what I think about this movie? Let's find out. But before we do, if you could, head down, hit that thumbs up like button, the subscribe button, and the little bell ding thing so you get notified every time I upload a new video. And also a little side note here, not that you guys would probably notice, but my lights are not working. My brand new lights that I just bought for the studio, the ones that go around the door here, yeah, they also went behind all this stuff. And I found out when I came home today that my cat ate them. Yes, my cat ate the lights. Little shit. So I have to buy new lights, which I've done, and I get them tomorrow and I'll put them back up. And I guess I'll just have to keep that door shut when I'm not here because my cat's an asshole. But he's just so goddamn adorable. Anyway, without further ado, let's dive into my spoiler-free review for The Black Phone. As I said, when I first watched this movie, I had a great time with it. It was a very satisfying movie, as much as a horror movie can be, but it definitely took me down some different emotional routes. So let's dive into what I do like about this film. Number one, first out of the gate, it's creative. It's new. It's a different concept. It's not a copy and paste horror movie. Lately, I feel like all these horror movies coming out are just, they're not creative enough. It's kind of regurgitating the same thing over and over again, especially when you dive into these big franchises that think 15 sequels of the same shit over and over again is the way to go, which concerns me about this movie possibly getting sequels, but we'll talk about that a little later in this review. But this movie really does mix up a few different subgenres of horror into one, which I really enjoyed that aspect. You kind of have this crime drama with a supernatural thriller all wrapped up in a psychological thriller. And the way they did it in this film was they kind of led you into thinking it was one genre and moved you into the other parts of the genre. And if you didn't watch any of the trailers, that would have been a bit confusing. They did it in a very nice way. Like, it was a nice bait and switch, if you will, of changing its genre from beginning to the end of the movie. The tone and setting make this movie believable in the year that it's held in. Like, I think I forget, it's like late 70s, early 80s sort of vibe, which typically when you have movies that go back into the past as timepieces, yeah, you kind of see they wear the clothes, but the way the camera shot is it's kind of modern and it takes you out of it. This movie was shot like it was shot in the 70s and 80s. And this is hugely to do with the costume department, hair and makeup, and the cinematography. All the details that go into that really put this movie as a timepiece of where it's held, and it makes it believable. And speaking of the cinematography, it's very eerie. It kind of gives a callback to the old style of horrors without regurgitating everything that the older horror movies did. It's a new take on it. It's a believable take on it. It's very creative use of lighting. It kind of reminds me of the Friday the 13th 2009 remake. Whether you like it, you don't like it, whatever, you have to give it credit where credit's due. Its cinematography was wonderful, and this movie I put it in that same realm. The acting in this movie is really well done, especially from Ethan Hawke. That's without even saying, like, the guy's a wonderful actor. We know this. But also the little girl who played Gwen. She pretty much stole the show for me. She did such an amazing job with this intensity that she has to deal with. These scenes that she's in that are just very uncomfortable, actually, sometimes, for a variety of different reasons. And she held her own. I saw her stretching her acting muscles. It seemed like I was watching a veteran actor, but like also a little girl. So kudos to her. She really knocked it out of the park. The lead character, Finney, his development and character arc story was very well done in this movie. We watch him grow and kind of break out of his shell. The person he is when he starts off in this movie is not the person he is at the end of this movie, and we get to watch that growth. We get to see it evolve. To me, that's something a lot of movies, especially in the horror genre, they kind of dropped the ball a little bit, especially with the younger actors. But this movie just did a wonderful job setting it up, telling us who this person is, and then making it believable that this person turned into the person that they did by the end of the film. The heaviness, the scare factor, the gore, it's almost done off camera. Like the stuff that is supposed to frighten you the most, you don't see in this movie, but that's good. That's a good thing because the story allows your imagination to fill in those blanks. If you're a person like me who has a very vivid imagination, you can really paint this nasty picture that they're trying to lay out for you. And to me, sometimes that works even better. Do the gory stuff off screen and then tell people what you did so they can fill in those blanks themselves, and that can create your own little horror. What is scarier to you? You make that part of the movie, and I love that sort of interaction. But then on the other side of things, there are also very uncomfortable moments in this movie that they do show that aren't necessarily into the horror aspect of it, but more of the realistic aspect of it. Setting up these characters, who they are, what their background is, and why they are who they are. And trust me, there's specifically one part dealing with the father, one scene, it's just so uncomfortable and cringy. I remember when I saw that in the theaters, I kind of just shut up. Like, me and Seth, we like to banter and we talk back and forth a little bit. Not disturbing. We're not annoying moviegoers, please. We whisper a little bit, it's like, oh, did you see that? Did you see? Oh, did you notice that? When that part of the movie showed up, I shut up. I had my full attention because it made me cringe a little bit. Seeing the realistic horrors of life that could happen to you, me, anybody, we got to see that happen, while the other very horrific things that happen off screen, they let you feel that in yourself. Another thing I really liked about this movie was when Gwen is having these visions, because they put this in the trailer. Gwen has dreams, and these dreams kind of fall into the supernatural realm that this movie takes.
Daddy, I had a dream about it.
What happened in your dream?
He was taken.
By a man with black balloons?
Yes.
And the way they portrayed those on camera, I thought were very well done. It's almost like they show her dreams in this 8mm camera style that was pretty prominent in the 70s and 80s, and also adds to that realistic effect that you're watching a movie that is actually held in the 70s and 80s. And all this adds up to the overtone that just gives this movie a creepy vibe. A big portion of this movie, you could believe that this could happen to people if you X out the supernatural part of it. Just the way they tell this story is a believable situation in the times that it's held. Hell, it's a believable situation in this time where a guy is going around kidnapping kids and torturing them. That is a huge thing that could happen to anybody, anytime, and unfortunately is something that happens anywhere and all the time. So you put all this stuff together, and I find that to be a very successful horror setup and continuation through this movie. But here's the part where I had time to sit and think about the aspects that I'm not too keen on once I gave them a second thought. So let's dive into what I'm on the fence about when it comes to this movie. A lack of connection between the grabber and the black phone. Now, they do hint that there is a connection between these two aspects, between this character and this, well, the black phone, the other, I guess you could call that a character? The gateway to other characters, if you will. I wish they would have dove more into that psychological part of it. Like, what is the grabber's experience with this phone? They hint at it. They give you little nuggets, little things like little pieces of dialogue that let you know that he thinks he's crazy because of this phone, but it's just not enough for me. I would really maybe like to see a flashback of him diving into this world of madness. Maybe this black phone is a result of why he is who he is. There's a whole story not told there that could be told. Hell, maybe it will in the future. Maybe they'll do a prequel, which wouldn't be a bad way to get a second film out. But again, we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But yeah, overall, I wish there was more connectivity between these two things.
Does it work? Not since I was a kid.
Finney and Gwen's dad. This character has very extreme changes. He starts off one very extreme way, and by the very end of the movie, he's in a very extreme different place. Now, The movie does explain why, but we don't get to see his journey. It just kind of happens here. He stays stagnant in the middle, and then boom, he's this way. And though you do understand why he had those changes, again, much like the grabber in the phone, there's a whole bunch of story elements that didn't quite lead me to believe that he would end up where he ended up. I really appreciate that character and what he brought to the story, but I would have liked to have seen his journey fleshed out just a hair bit more. But it wasn't bad, hence why I'm on the fence about it. Now, the calls from the black phone. As you see in the trailers, the grabber's past victims, who are now deceased, call through this phone, and Finney is talking to them on the phone.
Hello?
Don't hang up.
Who are you?
It's one of the things I consider to be very creative, something new, something that you haven't seen before. Listen, we've seen movies where people use phones to talk to deceased other people or get warnings or get threats from, some supernatural being. This does it a little differently, and I really enjoyed that part of it. But at the same time, this movie leans into it a little too heavy sometimes. It becomes a little too convenient for Finney. I would have liked to have seen Finney investigate things a little bit more on his own, but he doesn't. Everything's just told to him what to do, what not to do. And when he has questions, he just asks them and they answer the questions. There's not too much that he has to just go figure out on his own. Now, on to things I don't like about this movie. And there's just a couple, and some of them are kind of minor, but all in all, they are negative aspects to me. Number one being, there is a character in this movie that's close to the grabber. And I can't go into details of who or what, because if I do, that's major spoilers for the movie. But this character that's close to the grabber just seemed kind of pointless. It didn't really need to be there. It was more filler. It doesn't pay off. It doesn't really make sense why this character is even in this movie. It seems like this character was kind of used for the director to kind of jiggle the keys a little bit. So you look over here while you're not asking questions about this over there. It kind of seems like it robbed the story a little bit that way. Like, we don't really want to explain this, so look at this guy. Yeah, a little bit of a circus show, if you ask me, when it comes to that part specifically, because there are questions that I do have about why the police didn't investigate this certain thing, why they didn't look more into this other thing, and they used this character kind of close to the grabber to kind of sway you from those questions and have you focus on him instead. But again, who that character is a spoiler. So I don't want to talk about it, even though there is a lot to dive into when it comes to that. So maybe we'll do a spoiler talk. Do you want a spoiler talk? Let me know in the comments below. Because if you do, we'll do it. We're whores over here. We'll do whatever you want us to do. Some things, not all. Most things. If you pay. The character, the grabber, played by Ethan Hawke, one thing that really just did not sit well with me is why he was not caught earlier. There's a lot of suspension of disbelief of how this character made it this long, kidnapping this many kids and not get caught. They have detailed description of the van, things left at the crime scene, like these black balloons. It's kind of like his calling card a little bit. And he kidnaps these kids during the day. So you would imagine that in this small town, if a black van creeping around the neighborhood is something you need to be on the lookout for, I would imagine people would just be on the lookout for it. But no one seems to care when he comes around, even though he's responsible for quite a bit of kids missing at this point. And then when he does kidnap them, he doesn't do it subtly. He walks out and he's being very dramatic. Here's a little clip from the trailer to illustrate what I'm talking about.
Oh, you goof. Wasn't that just peachy keen?
You need some help?
You see that? Would you hand me my hat?
He's not being sneaky. He's out there in the open, looking very not normal. He kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. So the fact that he didn't get caught is just, again, that's just not believable to me. But overall, I really did enjoy this film. I still enjoy this film, even though I've kind of dove more into what I don't like and things I'm on the fence about. I really did enjoy the mixes of different genres coming together and kind of swaying you to believe this movie's one thing when it's actually another. I really enjoy that sort of thing. It keeps it from being predictable. And this movie also does a great job keeping you in suspense, especially with allowing you to paint these horrific scenes in your own head and let you envision them in your own sort of nightmarish sort of way. Even with the issues I have with this movie, I think its rewatchability is going to be great. I really do. And again, I'm really curious about sequels with this movie. I don't know if I'm curious or worried about, because this movie seems like a one and done, but I would also be curious to see what they would want to do with it if they make sequels. I'm just theorizing right now, but for all the reasons I just mentioned before, I'm giving this movie a B-.
That was wonderful.
Bravo!
I loved that.
Oh, it was great!
Well, it was pretty good.
There you have it, guys. There's my review for The Black Phone. Let me know, have you seen this movie? And if you have, what were your thoughts on it? Keep it spoiler free in the comments, but let me know what you thought. I'm very curious. Maybe you didn't like this movie and I want to know why. Maybe you love this movie but for different reasons than I did. Or maybe you like it for the same reason I did. Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below and let's start a discussion down there. Also, be sure to check out some more of my videos. And as always, stay trigger-happy, my friends. Peace.
Doesn't work. Not since I was a kid.
I'll scream. I'll scratch your face.
This face?